The following video is about our group's project of helping the conservation of wood ducks in Idaho. This video follows the progress of our group project and shows how we applied a systems theory approach. Throughout this semester, we have learned that a systems theory, in terms of communication, is defined as a set of interconnected parts working together to form a whole in the context of a changing environment. Our documentary evaluates how our group brought our individual strengths together as a whole to complete our project and how we adapted to the changing circumstances that we encountered. During our group project, we experienced verbal communication by using a variety of different channels to build a better understanding of our group task. By looking at verbal communication through a systems theory lens, we were able to focus on carrying out the group task and working through the process. Our group used Google Docs as one verbal communication channel to establish organization within the group and to outline the group's tasks. Our shared Google Docs allowed us to verbally communicate with each other as we developed new ideas and brainstormed about our project details. We also used texting as a verbal communication channel. At the beginning of the group project, Connor, our leader, created a group chat that allowed us to coordinate times that we could meet after class, talk about what needed to happen before class meetings, and stay in touch during the week to keep the project at the forefront of our minds. Our largest verbal communication channel that we used was face-to-face. This channel was our biggest communication method because of the time we spent both in class and outside of class working on our project. This helped in group meetings having the clear communication and lower risk of miscommunication. One major benefit that verbal communication offered to our group was that having the different communication channels allowed flexibility with our busy schedules, and our media technology allowed us to be in frequent communication with one another.
Marsh explains that nonverbals can take the form of body or facial gestures, tone of voice, turn-taking, use of time, or habits of dress or hairstyle. Some nonverbals that we experienced with our group included eyesight, crossed arms, nodding heads, and facial expressions. These facial expressions included a confused one, excited, and uninterested facial expressions. We also noticed the toll that open laptops had on our productivity and efficiency. We believe that it created a disconnection between group members, and it had members off topic most of the time. So after speaking with Melissa, we changed to sitting in a circle without our laptops or phones. And then we decided to remove the tables between us as well to increase the opportunity for cohesion.
Although our group shares a generous amount of similarities, we have still come to notice that we all have differing characteristics as well. Through our experiences together, we have learned how to take advantage of our individual distinctions. These distinctions are what creates diversity in our group. Sherblum and Harris state that diversity describes the reality of our national and world community that is made up of people having cultures, languages, and social customs different from our own. Within our group, diversity inspired creativity and innovation. We discovered different sets of skills and attributes that each of us had, and that would eventually contribute to the process of our project. Our group embraced and celebrated our diversity with open minds and positive feedback. Harris and Sherblum explained the value that positive feedback has on the effectiveness of diversity. Cohesion is a result of how well group members interact. It falls in a relationship with decision quality, task performance, and satisfaction. Cohesion blossomed in our group because of similarities we share, humor, spending time together outside of class, and being familiar with each other from past groups. This acquaintanceship allowed for better communication skills and a more relaxed environment. Feeling comfortable helped members feel like they could speak up on something they disagreed with or disliked. Within our group, we developed a shared set of norms. Aside from socializing throughout the project, we decided to take into consideration distractions from the outside world. We did this by sitting in a group at the beginning of every meeting without any form of distraction and asking every person in the group how their day was. This produced a relaxed environment and helped each member in the group gain focus. Within a group, roles are almost inevitable. While Connor was our formal leader, we all partook in individual leadership. Each of us obtained different contacts for choosing a project. Kylie emailed Mountain View High School, Jesse and Chase called Humane Society, Joe contacted Bugs, Boise Urban Garden School, and Catriel called Shoreline Plaza and Deer Flat National Wildlife Refuge. This is an example of assigned roles that each member volunteered to contribute to. Understanding the practicality and efficacy of roles and their descriptions can influence the process of the whole group.
As a group, we had to make several decisions on the path that we would take to complete our service project. The main decisions that had to be made were those of what project we were going to do, when we were going to meet to plan and carry out our project, and lastly, how we would go about completing our project. Throughout the class, we learned about several methods that small groups could use to make decisions, such as consensus, voting, and the nominal group technique. Our preferred method for making decisions was that of reaching a consensus among group members. We tried to ensure that all group members were on board with an idea before progressing further. If there was indecisiveness within the group, we discussed each group member's perspectives until we were able to all reach an agreement on a decision. We tried to promote creativity by taking part in a number of activities that help bring us together as a group and allow for freedom and expression of ideas. Some of these such activities included listing our personal hobbies and interests, listing connections that we had, listing service ideas that each individual had based off of our interests, and also going on a walk around the zoo. From the list that we had compiled of our interests and such, we were able to find common interests among many of the group members. One of the interests that we noticed we all had in common was that of nature and animals. From here, we had the idea to both take a walk on the Greenbelt as well as check into the local Humane Society to see if we could do some reparations there. Taking the walk as a group allowed us to find inspiration from nature. From this walk on the Greenbelt is where the idea of wood duck boxes emerged. We saw a pair of wood ducks sitting along the river's edge, and Joe mentioned the idea, which we all immediately agreed would be a great project. As we further explored this idea as well as our others, it soon became apparent that the wood duck boxes would be the best option for our group, given our individual strengths.
Connor held the formal leadership position in the group, and he did so in an effective manner that tied closely to the transformational style of leadership. He worked closely with the group and tapped into the motives of each member to encourage participation and creativity, which in turn helped us to accomplish our goal. He helped guide and influence group processes, but was not overbearing and often let other members assume leadership based off their strengths and the needs of the group. On multiple occasions throughout the project, emergent leadership was seen in every group member when they would willingly, without being asked, take charge of a portion of the project, guiding and directing other members throughout. Because of this, we saw many of the advantages of shared leadership, such as more creativity, enhanced morale, and an increased commitment to the project. We recognized the shared leadership aspect of our group early on, and because of this awareness, we were effectively able to mitigate the disadvantages, like less personal accountability. The group as a whole benefited from having an elected leader that we have all worked with on other projects. This familiarity made trust between the formal leader and the rest of the group an easy thing to come by. The group proved to be effective throughout the project in their leadership as we clearly communicated, remained task-oriented, and stayed highly motivated.
Our group experienced task conflict while making a decision for the service project. After our first options fell through and the deadline was approaching, stress was high and there were a few times when we argued briefly about which direction to take our project. Half of us were wanting to help out the Humane Society or another animal shelter, and the other half of us were wanting to build the wood duck boxes at the wildlife refuge. This conflict arose when we began gathering supplies for the wood duck houses and were faced with constraints on the cost of supplies, as well as gathering the correct measurements for the wood. Because of these constraints and challenges, a few members of the group began to second-guess our choice of project and suggested we try working on something different. Briefly, we disputed our options and came to a verbal consensus to work on the wood duck boxes, given our time, as well as a finalization on our resources and materials. Another conflict we observed within our group occurred due to scheduling issues and finding times to meet up. Because of our differing schedules with work and school, as well as the weight of our other classes, finding times to meet up outside of class put stress on the group. Along with meeting times, we also struggled with incorporating each member equally based on each of our specific skill sets. Conflict within our group was addressed constructively and ultimately allowed us to foster better understanding of our goals and objectives and the overall project. In dealing with conflict, our communication was open and supportive of everyone's ideas, and issues were addressed fairly and timely. We also used humor to lighten the mood in times of conflict in order to relieve stress and ensure that the conflict wouldn't affect the nature of the group.
At the beginning of this semester, we learned that there are many strengths that can be brought to a group by all the different members. Our group found that to be true in this project as well. One strength that we saw arise while searching for a project to choose was that each individual member brought different perspectives to the group as a whole. This allowed for creativity to flow and helped the group brainstorm through the different ideas. Being able to work together and share our ideas made way for synergy to be made within our group. The synergy that we experienced throughout this process allowed us to better problem solve and come up with solutions to the challenges that we faced. The group was also able to disperse the workload among each other without creating a divide in our group tasks process. We did this by each pursuing different options that we had developed for a project idea. Another strength working in a group ensured was that each individual had different connections and resources they were able to share with our group. This was evident in our search for a project. Joe reached out to his connection in Bugs, which is Boise Urban Gardens, to see if there were any raised garden plots that we would be able to fix up and plant. We also saw strength in our resources when it came time to buy supplies for our project. With there being 6 people in our group, we were able to split the cost of wood for the wood duck boxes 6 ways, making the price much more manageable for each person without compromising the group project. We also saw strength from the diversity in knowledge and experience that each group member contributed to the process. This showed in the actual building of the duck boxes. Chase, Joe, and Connor had more experience with building and using power tools than the rest of our group. On the other hand, Kylie and I's outgoing personalities benefited us as well when reaching out to the wildlife refuge to get approval for putting up the wood duck boxes. Another place we saw experience and personal knowledge help our group was Jesse's skills in photography and filming. Jesse was able to show us how to get the pictures that we needed and educate us on the process of putting those photos together with voices to create our documentary film.
The purpose of the wood duck boxes is to provide an alternative where hens can avoid predators such as raccoons and rat snakes and to also nest safely. With a common interest in the outdoors, our group connected with Idaho's pride in wildlife conservation. Through this service project, we were able to gain awareness into the interesting characteristics of wood duck nesting and reproduction, while at the same time helping to elevate local populations.
Throughout the process of completing our group project, we put into action many of the concepts that we had learned about in class. This was most obvious in the methods we used to make group decisions, build group cohesiveness, and also generate creativity. Group cohesiveness was really easy to build in our group, as nearly all of us had worked together at some point prior to the final project. This made the environment of our group very open to where everyone felt comfortable to share their ideas. One of the key concepts that our group employed in order to explore our ideas and ultimately make our plan of action was that of networking. Immediately after listing out interests of the group and finding common ground among group members, we looked at what potential group projects we could do from the connections that we had available to us. We followed these leads to fully investigate each of our options, and when one door closed, we opened another via our connections. While completing our project, we continued to learn by doing in regards to both how to communicate and plan within a small group setting, and also how to communicate and plan as a small group to individuals outside of our group to set up our service project. The concepts that we learned in class that proved to be most important in implementing our group's project were definitely those involving how to make decisions, promote creativity, and as mentioned, networking. This being said, although these were the most obvious concepts in our group, nearly every concept that we had learned in class played a role in the overall effectiveness of our group in one way or another. For instance, having a better understanding of both verbal and nonverbal communication made it easier to have more effective communication as a group, and also understanding that conflict is necessary and can be a positive thing if you allow it to be.